Hello, my name is Peter Debruge. I'm chief film critic at Variety magazine, and animation is really my passion. So it's really an honor to be able to host this conversation with the filmmakers behind 5 really exceptional animated short films. 5 films that, as diverse as they are in terms of their style and their content, have 2 things in common. 1, they're animated, and 2, they all have a French component. So here we have sort of a French roundtable or French adjacent, French friendly roundtable with the filmmakers behind 5 films, which you've had the chance to see. I'd like to start by giving the directors a chance, to introduce themselves with one question, which is, just give us a sense of, I know this, this question could be a 30-minute answer for each of you, but give us a sense of why this film. So say your name, or maybe I'll say your name so we can sort of know who's who, and just give us the sort of 1-2 sentence idea of what it was that compelled you to tell the film we just saw. I'm going to go with the order I have on my screen. I don't know that this is in any way alphabetical, but Bastien Dubois, who directed Souvenir, Souvenir, tell us about the project.
Hello, hi everyone. I think I made this film because I had to, and I can't avoid it. And I did my best not to make this film, but finally I can avoid it. It's a film about my relationship with my grandfather, who was a soldier during the war between France and Algeria. And so it was a big topic I carried for many years.
Yes, yours is certainly a very, very personal project. Weijia Ma, am I saying your name correctly?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. Tell us about Step Into the River, another film that may be personal. I don't know.
I'm Weijia, director of Step Into the River. I made this film because the story based on my personal experience and the stories I knew from my friend, but it's not a kind of documentary kind of film. It's actually fiction, but I wrote it based on the real materials, and of course it's very important to me.
Thank you. Hugo De Foconpre, who directed Mum is Pouring Rain. Hugo.
Hi, everyone. I think basically this idea came from everything in the daily life, because one of the main theme is the depression in families, the depression of a parent. And I think it's something really common and also present in my family. And I think I wanted to talk about that to kids and to find words and images for that. So it has to be done also, I would say.
Thank you. I have Sandra Desmazières. I'm sorry, Sandra. Desmazières. What a beautiful name. Tell us about Flowing Home.
Je suis désolée, je vais parler en français. Fariza va traduire. Flowing Home, c'est une histoire que j'avais envie de parler depuis un moment. Je suis d'origine vietnamienne et mes parents se sont rencontrés au Vietnam dans les années 70 pendant la guerre. Et c'est vraiment une période importante pour moi et j'avais envie de raconter une histoire qui parlait de ces moments-là, de séparation, de la guerre et de quitter son pays. Voilà. Fariza.
Fariza, would you mind translating for us? You're muted still, sorry.
Farida, ton micro est coupé.
Sorry, yes, je viens de voir. So Flowing Home is a film about the Vietnam War, not actually about the Vietnam War, but it's occurring during the Vietnam War. It's a subject that Sandra wanted to treat for quite some time. Her mother is Vietnamese and her father is French, and they met in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. So it's a period that she wanted to talk about for quite some time.
Thank you. And Reza Riahi, who directed The Musician, Tell us about the origins of this film.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, the musician, it's about the story of two lovers in 13th century in Persia, and how they get separated in the attack of the Mongols, and how they went on with their lives. And it's a story of the resilience, and how me or every one of us actually, we left our countries, and how we go on after the other whether oppression or war or whatever, we go on, and how it impacted in our lives. So the story is a story of these two lovers, but overall is a story of the resilience.
And the story is based in history. Is the characters are fictional, invented, or do they? Okay, yeah. All right, I'd like to talk a little bit about the technique of each of these films. And I love not only how different the subject matter is, but really there's an incredible diversity of visual approaches, of techniques, some things that look like they're done entirely by hand that are maybe much more complicated than audiences would realize. I'm just going to go backwards through the group that we just had. So Reza, let's stay with you. I'm very interested in the style of the animation here, because there's not a lot of. It looks like you're using like some sort of maybe acetate or thin sheets of transparent material with very beautiful backgrounds. So it looks like it's all been done by hand, but looks can be deceiving. Tell us about your technique.
Yeah, it's everything's done by hand. Yeah, of course. Everything started with a sheet of papers that I went to the store to find out the look that I was looking for, and I kind of created my own technique to be able to have these effects. Of these, there's two techniques. There's a black and white one and the colored one. They're totally different. They're paper cutout, traditionally in front of the camera, stop motion. So everything's happened in front of the camera, and it was actually animated in front of the camera. And what separates them is one of them is like a kind of the cell plastic that's treated, that I painted on them, and the other one is the colored one that has so many layers of colors and paper, and also the cell plastic, and yeah, it's all stop motion actually.
And were you sort of reinventing the wheel for this technique? By which I mean, doing the inventing something for your own purposes, or were you looking to other animation artists? I thought of Michel Osselot, who of course is a very respected and well-known French animator with his sort of silhouette style a bit in the way things are hinged and in profile. But what was your inspiration?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, paper cutout traditionally has been done through years, of course, and the Michel Oslo and all so many artists. But this one, I was really looking for the very fluent animation that we can see that's like paper cutout stop motion, but I really wanted to really feel the emotions and the movements, and kind of mix of not live action, but you can mix of the acting of the character. So it was very important to me. So what actually I can't say I didn't invent, but I really did for this film was mixing of this painting on the characters while moving them, meaning so many of the shots that they were like characters are looking at each other, or there was some emotion talking between them, that was done by painting on the plastic, in the same time moving plastics, I mean the papers. And it's kind of the mix of technique that animators, they were doing this, two of them same time, so the characters communicating together. And at the same time, the other technique is total cutout of the black and white thing. That is the lights is below, and it's totally different of the setting for the animators.
Thank you, Sandra. Your film also looks as if it was animated by hand, but of course these days that can be incredibly demanding and time-consuming. You may have used a digital aid or tool. Tell us about the style you used and how you brought it about.
Oui, c'est un mélange de techniques. Une partie de l'animation a été faite en France sur papier au crayon et en faisant des ombres à la peinture et au crayon papier. Et une autre partie a été faite au Canada sur TV Paint avec des animatrices qui ont inventé des pinceaux et des formes qui ressemblaient au crayon et au grain du papier pour pouvoir toujours garder cette vibration qu'il y a dans le... Il y a beaucoup de personnages avec beaucoup d'ombre dessus et ça recrée exactement le même effet. Et l'idée, c'était de mélanger ces deux techniques et de ne pas différencier l'animation traditionnelle sur papier et l'animation sur ordinateur. Ensuite...
Je vais juste traduire cette partie-là, Sandra, parce que sinon ça va faire trop long pour moi. So it's in Flowing Home, there's a mix of both animation on paper, which Sandra did in France, and TV Paint animation done in Canada, because we are in co-production with the National Film Board of Canada. So the animators there created new brushes to match Sandra's style on paper.
The idea being that you wouldn't be able to distinguish between...
Exactly.
Go ahead, Sandra, continue.
Et ensuite, mon idée aussi, c'était d'avoir un rendu très peinture. Et du coup, j'ai scanné beaucoup de matières peintes à la peinture à l'huile, au pastel gras. Et ce sont des matières qui ont été rajoutées après dans After Effects sur des personnages mis en couleur sur Photoshop avec juste des aplats de couleurs.
She was also trying to get an oil painting look. So she used many textures that she created with ink or with oil paint that she added after the animation during the compositing.
Et pour avoir un effet un peu année pellicule 16 mm, j'ai fait toute une série de dessins au fusain ou avec des crayonnés. Et c'est un cycle de matière qui revient en boucle comme ça tout au long du film et selon les séquences qui sont plus ou moins importantes.
There's also an added layer of a grain done with charcoal or pencils to add a 16 mm look, a 16 mm print look.
Great. As I suspected, on one hand, it really convinces us that it's, sort of all done with practical hand techniques, which of course are the basis of it. But the way that animators these days bring these elements to life can be very, very complicated. It really is a beautiful result. Congratulations. Hugo, your film is a television format, is that right? It's sort of a 30-minute. Tell us about the sort of your visual style, which looks like more traditional animation in that you have line drawn characters, very smooth animation. But of course, I don't know how you sort of carried it off. So please share.
Yeah. I would say that I started with what I loved as a kid. So with children's book and the movie I loved as a kid. And so I wanted to make a movie this way, like with the hand-painted background, like the classical Disney or Ghibli movies, with all the characters at this time were drawn on celluloid. And with all the gouache directly on the celluloid. But we just did the characters digitally. But all the backgrounds on the movie are still handmade, like painting on paper. We really wanted to keep that and to stick with this idea. Also because it's really pleasant to do. And I think it's important to keep some pleasure when we are making film as we are doing it, like spending hours on it. So I think it's really important. And of course, all the animation is digital on TV Paint, and as well as the FX animation and the compositing on After Effects and all that. But yeah.
Tell me, you mentioned Studio Ghibli, and watching it, I was reminded in many ways of what for me is my favorite animated film of all time, My Neighbor Totoro. I mean, the score evokes, I think, Joe Hisaishi, the sort of some of the character designs. The grandmother has a face who could be perhaps from a Ghibli film, but even the story at the center of it, is if you think of Totoro, it's a very simple story. Two young girls go with their father to a new home in the country. Their mother is sick in a hospital, and they don't have a full understanding, but the tension of what is wrong with their mother is affecting them, and that and there's sort of a magical character, as in your film. Am I over connecting the two, or is that really something you had in mind?
No, in fact, I didn't have that in mind, but some people said it to me, like watching the animatic on some point. And I just watched this movie when I was a kid, because I'm not this kind of person like watching 50 times a movie. I'm just so when somebody said that to me, I was just like, okay, I won't watch it again until I finish the movie. And like 1.5 months ago, I watched it again, and I was just like, okay, so this is a really strong movie, because I think it touched me. Yeah, it touched me a lot. I think there are many different things, of course, but I won't say, my bad. I won't say there are no links, because it would be a lie. But it's not like intentional. So I think it means this was a really strong movie, and still a really strong movie.
It is quite interesting how we carry sort of these stories from our childhood, very deep in our subconscious some ways, whether or not that was a deliberate connection. It's also one of the things about the medium that you are all participating in, is that you can have that effect on audiences as well. And you're obviously thinking of a young audience here dealing with a very difficult topic, this idea of how to understand mental illness, depression in your family.
Yeah.
Weijia, would you tell us about the style of yours? As with Sandra's film, it looks hand-drawn, but I'm guessing again that it was much more complicated than that.
Yes, we have two different kind of styles in the film. For the present time, we have the background painted like on paper with real pastels, and then we scan it into the software and adding more details and lighting on it. And then we have another, but only two very short scenes that are completely different. Those are marked with the different kind of thick brush style, and also a very different kind of perspective shots. Those are the illusion scenes from the two girls. And the whole part of that style were made digitally, and so did the character animation. So basically we mixed the 2D digital animating scale with the some kind of background drawing on real paper. And then we did the composition, lighting, coloring later in the software.
Again, the way that these different, each of these films sort of bring multiple techniques together is part of the pleasure of them. There's a way that our imaginations and our eyes are constantly, kind of like being introduced to new visual languages, the way that the musician has black and white segments, the sort of the more surreal aspects of your film, Weijia, the way that sort of blends in. Bastien, your film is mind-bogglingly complex in terms of just the visual language of it. And, there are two clear elements. There's sort of like the 2D animated film within the film, the Algerian war cartoon parody. but even the surrounding element is constantly changing. Tell us just about how you settled on those two styles, but also how you made it, how you carried them off. Again, let's do it in a way that this could be a 45-minute presentation, I suspect, for yours. Tell me briefly how you did that.
My first approach was to make a very simple graphic style for this film. I was looking at outlines, black and white, almost no backgrounds, just a layer of gray ink, because I wanted the story to be in front. I didn't want the graphism to overcome everything, and I really want to first sharing the story. But I started to work with Jorge Gonzalez, an Argentinian illustrator, for a feature film project, and I was so enthusiastic about this collaboration that I started to use this style for this short film. First, because I enjoyed it, and second, because it was making me more comfortable with the story I was telling, because this story was so difficult to handle with, and there was so much complicated aspect in the storytelling of making this kind of making of a film I don't want to make. So I was not sure with what I was struggling with in terms of scenario. So it was easier for me to go back to my previous animation approach, to have something rich and graphically and technically complex, because it's my comfort zone. So that was easier for me to go into this direction. So also, yeah, there is two styles in the film. One is more about my everyday life as a director, as a human being, evolving in an everyday routine. And the other one is what was my idea of making this film about the Algerian war and what my grandfather experienced. And slowly, this first idea of this first glimpse of a childish film start to come inside my life as something that haunt my environment, and the two styles start to melt. So this cartoony style for the Algerian war is like classical 2D animation made with TV paint, and the other style is it's look like 2D animation, but it's a very weird mix of 3D and compositing and blending with a lot of texture. So yeah, it would take a long time to explain all the details, but we made a small making of that maybe can give more information about all that.
Yeah, I got a chance to see that, and I would encourage people to take a look, because it as we've heard from some of the other animators here, what looks very deceptively hand done is not at all. It's all textures and drawings mapped onto CG characters, and levels of illusion to sort of make it look like sketches that have kind of come to life. Because we have the producers with us, it's a really unique opportunity to sort of have a different angle on the same projects. And given the complexity of this, I don't know if your films involved were all finished during COVID. Maybe some were done beforehand, but if you don't mind, we'll go through each of the films again from the producer's point of view, and maybe just single out one element that it felt like the highest hurdle, or that was really a challenge to make the project a reality. Amiel Tenembaum worked with Bastien on Souvenir. Tell us from your point of view.
I think the most difficult thing was to work with the personal story of Bastien, to follow him with this very personal story. And previous films from Bastien were very graphic, and with stories where he was only an eye seeing what was around him. But there in Souvenir, he was looking inside himself, inside his own family. So it was the the technical aspect was difficult, but this was very well handled by Bastien. But following him and during this long process where I came on board a few years before we finished the film, but Bastien had this story for many, many years. And managing to accompany him was the hardest thing. And I'm very proud we managed.
I'll remind people that Bastien also directed a film nominated for an Oscar, the short film Madagascar, A Journey Diary, which is also a very visual film, but one that has almost none of the personal depth, complexity, the topicality of this film. It's really interesting to see both ends of your sort of artistic expression between those two projects. Let's see here. We have two producers representing Step Into the River, Damien and Justin. Would either or both of you like to speak about that film?
Sure. Weijia's film was really challenging in terms of storytelling because it's dealing with a very serious topic, and the challenge was to find the right distance and the right tone for it. And I think we managed to offer more than this serious topic, and to offer a film that with its with the power of animation and fantasy is offering something more to, in a way, overcome the trauma of the past. And also in terms of production, it was a challenge because we made the film between China, Paris, Strasbourg, and even La Réunion Island, which is an island in front of South Africa.
It was a reason for Weijia to travel all around the world, let's say it.
So Weijia traveled, went to Strasbourg, went to Paris, went to La Réunion. And when she was in Strasbourg, almost finishing the animation, the first lockdown fell on us.
But luckily, it was the end of the production, so we still had all the post-production to do, but the production was over.
Yeah, not all the animation.
Yeah,
not all the animation. So we were a bit panicking, and we had to send Weijia back in China, and we did another film about this travel.
Thanks to Weijia creativity, we turned this COVID craziness into a beautiful documentary comedy style that you should all enjoy watching.
What is the name of that film, so we know?
My Quarantine Bear, or My Quarantine Bear.
Say again?
My Quarantine Bear.
Okay, My Quarantine Bear. Got it. And do the two of you always work in animation? You mentioned, sort of the power of animation to tell this story, and I agree. The sort of allegorical aspect, with the koi fish, the discovery of the girls in the water, etc. But I don't know. Tell us just a bit about your company.
Yeah, we don't produce animation only, and we were nominated for the Oscar 2 years ago with a comedy in the best live action category. So a very, very different film.
Which short was that? We might remember.
Nefta Football Club by Yves Pierre.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah, so total comedy. Otherwise, we also producing features and documentaries, so we were quite open in terms of.
We're producing in many fields, but animation. When we started the production company like 10 years ago, animation was one of the first. The first short we made was an animation short with the director that later we won a French Academy Award with a film called Wicked Girl. So animation has always been
we like to in a way push the border of animation, and we like this this idea in a Weijia project that it's coming from a personal story. It has a documentary background in a way, and the film won some awards in some documentary festivals, but at the same time it's a fiction, and it's totally using the power of animation to tell its story. So it's a kind of project that we really like to produce.
In a way, 3 or 4 of the films here could be considered documentary. Some remind that animation, as in the feature film Flea this year, animation is a way of creating reenactments. It's also a way of fictionalizing. Reza's film is is based on a historical event, but it's using fictional characters. But in the case of Step Into the River, Souvenir is a very complex form of documentary, one that involves the sort of breaking of the fourth wall and self-reflexivity about the director's search. Flowing Home is a reflection of Sandra's family story, recreated in a way that when you don't have B-roll or when you don't have live action footage, animation becomes a very powerful tool. And even when you do have those things, it's worth saying that animation can sometimes be superior to express certain things. Before we move on to Mum is Pouring Rain, I want to hear again from Weijia, because I know that it's very, very late where you are, and I don't want to lose you. But maybe playing off of what I was just saying, of course, you are an animator, so it was never a question how you would choose to express this story. But what would you say is the power of this medium of animation, to be able to convey a topic that obviously is very controversial, is very emotional in China right now? If you don't mind, just sort of the philosophy of the power of this medium to tell the story.
Sure. I think animation is a very free media for me to use. Sometimes I feel this freedom, and especially when I made Step Into the River. It's a film that's not kind of fantastic or for the children kind of genre. It's really about the reality. So I think in a way it gives us a safe space especially for the harsh parts of it. Because if it's live action, you probably can't stand for seeing a real dead body of a baby, but you accept that in animation, and you take it totally serious. So that's something I think it's really great for this media. And of course, you got more freedom, how to transform from one scene to another, and it's actually shrinking the time, because for Step Into the River it's only 15 minutes, and it for the story it has many scenes and stuff in it, but if you switch it into live action, you probably can't have that much content in it. So it has a different timing. It's faster, but you absorb the informations faster too. So that's another part. I think it's great by using animation.
Those are all really great points. Thank you. I think of films like Funan and Grave of the Fireflies are great examples of features that I just cannot imagine being able to take in that kind of the heaviness of those subjects. Or yours. I mean, there's no way we would be scarred for life, to see this depicted in live action. But there's a dream logic to animation as well. So yeah, congratulations and thank you for that explanation. Yvonne, you worked on Mum is Pouring Rain. Tell us how you and Hugo know each other, and what the biggest hurdle was for the film.
Yes, actually, so we met Hugo in a previous project, a short film he did the storyboard for, and Hugo had the great idea to leave his notebook somewhere one evening in the studio. So with my associate Antoine, we had a look and we discover actually the notebook is here. Hugo has it. We discover his touch and the first sketches he had for this idea, and we really fell in love with the story, and especially about to talk about this topic for children. I think that, as Hugo mentioned, what was the core of the idea, and I would say retrospectively, it's maybe one of the biggest challenge we had, because it's a light film, it's a comedy, it's for children and family. And yet it was pretty hard to convince broadcasters that, you can talk about depression for children. It took us a few years to find the first broadcasters, Canal+, and once Canal+ came on board, everything felt a little bit easier suddenly. Yeah, that was for the beginning of the story. And for the production, of course, it was quite a challenge, especially as Hugo mentioned, the animation styles is pretty traditional, 2D traditional, but the hand-painted backgrounds for that kind of format, a TV special, is not something very used those days. And we also thought, as Hugo, that it has to be done this way. Even as a producer, the first time Hugo say, yeah, I want to do 30 minutes with hand-painted backgrounds, you kind of have like this moment where you think, okay, is that even doable? Because hand-painted background is pretty hard to estimate, like production is all about the quotas, how you really calculate your time and therefore the money you have to spend. And as Hugo would say, there is no Control Z with painting. Sometimes you paint 3-4 hours on a background, and you have to start from scratch because there is a small mistake. And on the film, there was like around 260 original backgrounds. So that was something pretty hard to estimate during the production. The production was like 1 year long in the whole 2020. And actually something else happened in 2020 that you may have heard of. So we had a small delay of 2 months because of that. I don't think that was the biggest challenge. I mean, everybody was shut down for a couple of months, but we kind of had to be really, really careful about every little steps and especially the backgrounds. Yeah.
That really does make a difference, though, and it is something that in the foreground with the characters looks like it's as polished as a lot of the animation we see on American television. The style of the characters is clearly artistic and represents a very particular kind of like character design, but the backgrounds really give everything that kind of hand touch. And I think that that's something that audiences respond to, not necessarily aesthetically, but it makes the whole thing feel more personal. And this is a personal story. So I'm glad you fought for that and that it was never a question. Fariza, tell us about Flowing Home. Are the two of you both based in France, or geographically? You mentioned, I think, a Canadian portion of the team as well.
Yes, Sandra lives in Paris, just which is where Les Films de l'Arlequin is based. But the film was done in co-production with the National Film Board of Canada, so part of the production happened in Montreal. And also we had a partner in Malaysia, where we did all the coloring of the film. So it was a bit complicated, but not so much. The time zones are manageable.
Interesting. Why Malaysia? That's, of course, geographically significant to the story, but
yes,
why did
part of the film happens on the island of Malaysia, yes.
And is that why you wanted to work with a creative team there?
It's part of the reason why. It's also because we had there's a studio there called Inspidi, which we know which we've known for a long time, and we never had the opportunity to work together. And so Sandra's film was the perfect opportunity to finally work together.
And what would you say the biggest challenge was? You have all these geographical elements. I don't know how the pandemic played into it, and it may be really different.
The pandemic didn't play a role because we finished the film just before the lockdowns everywhere.
Great.
But we had several challenges. First, during the financing of the film, because the film is impregnated with Vietnamese culture, and the way the character express themselves is really Vietnamese, so they don't show off a lot their emotions So during the financing phase of the film, it was a little bit difficult to explain to people why, well, people had a hard time understanding why the characters in the film didn't express more their feelings or emotions. But we couldn't change the script. It's the characters are like that because people are like that there. So we had it was a bit difficult to finance the film because of that. Another
true to that cultural aspect of the characters and to Sandra's, way of.
Yes, we would get feedback asking us to change the dialogues, to change the text of the letters so that the sisters would express more how they felt.
Very interesting. And again, I'm glad you fought for it because in a way, not only is that true to Sandra's understanding of her culture and of those characters, but there is an element where there can be a tendency sometimes in animation to or in any kind of filmmaking, to articulate things. And in some ways that closes off our reading of things.
Yes, there's a modesty in the way people express their feelings, and it's really part of the film, and I think part of how the film conveys emotion. Even it's a bit, it might seem contradictory to say that because they don't express too much emotion, it creates emotion, but it does.
No, not at all. I mean, there are countless examples of that, in cinema where we project what we bring to it, whether it's out of personal experience or our interpretation, onto silence, onto that kind of reserve. And when someone tells us exactly what someone's thinking, it limits only that interpretation.
And in Sandra's film, what the characters say is as much as important as what they don't say.
Right. Great. Eleanor, I'm sorry that you're the last one to hear from here, but tell us about, how do you and Reza know each other, and what was the challenge in making The Musician?
Reza and I know each other because we met at the end of the year at La Poudrière, which is a school in Valence that Hugo went to, I think. It's a school only for...
Is that true?
Yes. I've lived in Paris for 30 years, but I'm an American. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Terry.
I'm a very old woman, but I'm a young producer. So I'm very happy to be here with people like Bastien and Damien and Hugo, who I admire greatly. So it's very nice.
So you met?
We met at La Poudrière. I work in distribution and financing and features and series, and I'm not a veteran short film maker at all. But I really loved his student film called Entre Chien et Loup that was bought by Arte. And I like his approach where he stays rooted in where he's from and tells very universal stories. And so I said, what are you doing next? And he said, oh, I have an idea. And I said, well, let's work on it. And so we got started. And then Reza went to Ireland to work with Cartoon Saloon on The Breadwinner. And then he came back, and then we started financing. And I have to say, it's been an absolutely delightful challenge. Because this, in contrary to a lot of the other films, is entirely handmade. It's all began with pieces of paper, either plasticky paper or just regular paper, and it remained that way till the end. So there's no computer trafficking going on. It's entirely made and animated under the camera. Mm-hmm. So we had hundreds and hundreds of puppets and hundreds of backgrounds. And we had a fantastic musician working from Tehran who actually told the story of the film because there's no dialogue. So that was also a really compelling experience to work with Saba and to help him to understand, because he'd never scored a film before, but he's a master of the instrument called the kamanche, which is the instrument, an ancient Persian instrument that the musician plays in the film. And to help Saba find the voice. So he understood that he was the voice of the film, which I think he did very well. And it links to something that one of the other producers said, which is that this is a film that's very rooted in its culture. So my idea of what a festive music or a party would be is not necessarily what the festive music in a Mongol king's party is. And I think that that authenticity and the power of the voice of that instrument really adds to the storytelling and allows people to be drawn into the story and to really relate to this, this love story of two very old people. So we're really appealing to the human spirit in a very handmade way. And I think there's a real power and value to handmade films, because I think the audience can feel that there's sort of an invisible connection that gets established when it's made in a very well-crafted way.
The music is just, I mean, breathtaking in this movie. This is going to sound like a strange compliment, but my cat perked up its head from the first note and sat there watching the entire film with me, as if like, what is this sound? It's like, I mean, it's just, and it's beautiful. It's sustained. It's like there's moments where silence become very powerful too, and the interrupted.
Yeah, well, this was the challenge, right? When you don't have dialogue or anything, you've got to bring people through the story, right? You've got to have ups and downs, but it's got to build to something. And that took time to get that pacing. And also we had very specific production constraints, because the animators animated to videos of Saba playing the instrument, so that when the musician is playing the kemonche, they're actually animating to a video of Saba playing it, so that they're getting the movement exactly right. So it was sort of like a hi-fi, lo-fi production that we didn't work during the pandemic. We finished before, but that probably wouldn't have had much of an impact, because we were
it's really interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. It's really interesting how these 5 works are all artistically just really, really impressive. And on top of it, we know how the Academy really seems to respond to the importance, in air quotes, of a film subject, but that's really something organic to each of these. I mean, each of you as artists is dealing with big, deep things, the layers of complexity, whether it's immigration. Bastien, I've lived in France for a short time, but I feel like it's said in your film, that the Algeria's war for independence is really a taboo subject, and so much to the point that even though Algerian culture and people who were born or immigrated from are part of the what you experience in France, no one talks about this. And I was learning not only about it through your film, but also learning about why we don't hear about it. And that I think, well, I don't know, I'd like to hear maybe really briefly from you just about, maybe we have just a short time for one last thing from everybody. Maybe we can talk about whether there was any resistance to dealing with, the subjects that you were talking about.
Maybe in this film, I didn't really speak about I spoke about the blockage of my grandfather, but I don't get the feeling that I really speak about the blockage in the whole French society. I'm not really sure, because I don't have I don't have your author point of view from a foreigner point of view. But what the feedback I get once the film was finished, I thought the film was really Frenchy French, and with a very French topic, a bit too talkative and long. And the feedback I get was that there was even more a positive response from the foreigners than from the French audience, because, and I was curious about that. I was like, why is it's so French and complicated, and blah, 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 why did you pick my film? And the answer was, actually this topic is wider than just the topic of conflict between France and Algeria. And this is the kind of situation that you can face in many different countries, both as occupant or occupied countries. And this kind of traumatized that people and families go through such issues as conflict or even family traumas or whatever. This is something that I think is way more universal than just this topic of war between France and Algeria I go through in my family.
It's not even limited to war or you know, sort of humanitarian problems. I mean, there is an element going on right now where the young generation is having to process, you know, the complicity or ignorance or just a different, you know, mindset that their parents and grandparents had, and the very specific focus on the Algerian war becomes a way, even as an American, to think about the way that we talk about race in this country, or the way that you know, I think it's much broader than that. Sometimes, as we said with Sandra, where silence can be powerful, sometimes specificity can too, and it can be a jumping off point for associations. Sandra, I'm going to jump to you. Was there any difficulty or pushback to telling the story of this Vietnamese sort of refugee immigration story?
Oui, alors pour moi c'était très difficile de parler de ce moment-là, parce que c'est parler de la guerre, c'est toujours des moments douloureux, de se rappeler du passé. Et Fariza, je trouve.
Go ahead, Fariza. You're muted.
Sorry, I was apologizing while I was muting. So it was difficult for Sandra to speak about that topic.
Donc ma mère est vietnamienne et mon père est français, donc je suis aussi issue de la décolonisation. Donc c'était difficile de parler de ça. Par exemple, mon grand-père n'a jamais voulu me rencontrer parce que j'étais enfant de français. Et ma mère, elle n'a pas voulu me transmettre toute l'histoire de la famille parce qu'elle ne voulait pas se rappeler du passé, de la guerre. Donc même pour moi aujourd'hui, c'est difficile de discuter avec elle, mais par exemple, mon neveu arrive plus facilement à parler avec elle de pourquoi elle est partie, c'était quoi cette période, c'était quoi la guerre.
It was difficult for her to talk about it because it's still very hurtful for the people who lived through that period. For instance, Sandra's grandfather never wanted to meet her because she was the daughter of a Frenchman, or her mother also never talked to her about that period. Although for Sandra's mother, it's easier now to talk about it, not to her daughters, but to her grandchildren.
Mais pour moi, c'était important de faire ce film parce que, comme j'ai pas eu cette transmission, je voulais recoller un peu les morceaux de mon histoire, mais aussi de l'histoire de Vietnamiens qui sont partis du Vietnam et qui eux-mêmes n'avaient pas l'histoire de leurs parents. C'était vraiment quelque chose qu'ils n'arrivaient pas à comprendre et c'était pas transmis. Et j'espère qu'avec ce film, j'ai pu parler des moments très intimes des sœurs et de parler de moments particuliers sans parler de l'histoire du Vietnam, de la guerre du Vietnam, et prendre cette histoire à bras-le-corps.
So as it is still a very difficult topic inside families, the film was a way for Sandra to reconnect with her story, the story of her family, and also for people who lived through the same issues to reconnect with their own stories.
Weijia, we talked about the heaviness of the subject, but is there any pressure not to discuss this in contemporary China right now, or?
I would say, I think it's more, when I started, I feel very emotional of making this project, but I started in 2015. And everything was nice, and I don't think we are forbidden of speaking any of those sensitive topics. But now it's getting hard. So for me, it's I have a very complicated feeling that like all these years that we made this film, and now it's really not the good time for releasing it. But still, I don't regret making this film. I think it's still important to speak for myself, and I think we have some films addressing this topic, live actions, but we don't really have one animation for this topic. So I guess mainly, but we spent a lot of time discussing about the scripts, and we actually rewriting for more than 20 different versions, because it's difficult working, I need to translate from Chinese to English, and then my producers, they need to translate it into French. And so, there are many things I need to explain with them. So for me, I guess more the long period time of making this project tired me. But really, for other parts, I think it's not a problem for us.
It's interesting. We've known that this has been a controversial topic decades ago, and it is interesting and scary, some of the around the world, but in China too, the restrictions that are being put on speaking about certain things. Thank you for sharing it. Hugo, Yvonne mentioned that there was difficulty in getting support for a film about depression for children, but that is the point of your film. What was your feeling in terms of, that's obviously not a point you could compromise on, but talk a little bit about just what it was like encountering that something so prevalent, could be so controversial with some of the people you pitched the film to.
Indeed, it was quite difficult at the beginning because as you said, it's a tough topic, and even though it's really common and in, I would say, maybe in every family. So we were a bit surprised by this reaction. So most of the time it was like, okay, great project. It sounds nice, but depression. So they wouldn't take it like to broadcast it or so. So I think what helped us a lot was the teaser we did for the Cartoon Forum. Because as soon as people watch images and hear sound, and as soon as they can feel the tone of the movie, I think it helps a lot. So I think for next movies, I will do like a 40 seconds teaser on my own to show, because I think it's better. It's easier with that, and it helps also to practice and to try the technique we want to. So benefits for everyone, I think, even if it takes time.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And
if I just may add,
yeah,
first Hugo is moved to a church. Actually, that's why you have a huge echo now. Hugo, you have a huge echo.
It looks like
no, actually, when
an animated field.
When I mentioned that it was pretty hard, it's interesting because when I hear all the other backgrounds, I'm thinking, okay, that definitely not the heaviest subject, depression, and yet I don't know why. I think it's because of the format, and there was something which made it very taboo for children. I think that's very the difference with it's like for children. Suddenly you want to talk about a topic, and why is depression taboo? Because as Hugo mentioned, once people understood it was a comedy, was an adventure light, everybody was kind of hooked with the idea. But to break this taboo that, hey, depression happened, your parent, and actually for us, it was also important to say, that parents have depression, but, that's life. It's okay. You can live with it. It's actually not bad. And I think also now that we saw the career of the film, we, for different reasons that, Bastien says his movie is very French, especially in the core, I think like, when Hugo and the co-author Lison wrote the script and all the funny part, we thought he was pretty French also in the way he was telling the story, and yet the reaction that we had from different parts of the world show that it's very interesting to see that this topic is kind of like common to everybody, and everybody could relate to it.
Yeah. I'd say, as we said earlier, the Frenchness of it, it becomes what is fresh and original for an audience, but the universality becomes, translates. Reza, I'd like to wrap with you, and the fact that your film takes place centuries ago would seem to give a sort of protection from controversy, but at the same time, there's some very tough things happening there. Did you feel any sort of resistance in telling the story from the world, from financiers, anything like that?
Not necessarily for this film. Saying that is actually I went to the roots of the problem, or how these people of this region deal with this oppression, how this history of the resilience, how the hope. And actually, I myself, I witnessed, I was in the demonstration in 2009. I lost two friends of mine, and I saw people die in front of me first time in my life. I was like, wow. So that was a point, the change. There was a point that it changed my life and everything I was starting to do, to write, to draw. And after that, I went to the point so that there's a musician, and there's obviously there's other films that are going to come, but a musician, I was very concentrated on the roots of how this iconic character, like a musician, get blinded, like so many of us, by this government or whatever the oppression or the invader is, and what we continue to do, painting, music, film, storytelling, all that. So it's kind of this iconic character. No, there wasn't anything like directly to me for this film, but it will in the future for other films, of course, and I have to deal with not going back home for other things that I'm going to do, of course. But I started this film because it's kind of the very first one about the story of these people, like this resilience, this thing that makes us go, continue, and start from zero. Everything that I did actually here, I started everything from zero, and it's like so many people and so many migrants or any country. So I tell the story about it for this Middle East because I'm from there, but it's a pattern that it's used and repeated in every other countries, other region, other centuries, other generations. So that was the thing that actually, when we were doing the film with Eleanor, it was very come from heart, and we were very wanted to do this, and we will actually in other films, but we never thought that it's going to have this impact to other people in other countries, and they're gonna really touched and discuss with this subject. Even though I know that's this kind of the pattern, this iconic, very like kind of the fairy tale kind. I already intended to do the classic one in the first film, but I didn't know that people are gonna really relate to this. Yeah.
As we were saying with China, Persia, Iran today can be one of the most controlling of subjects, and in a way, maybe a way to talk about some of the issues happening today is to go back in time and to pretend as if there's a distance when what you're really commenting on is contemporary issues.
Yeah, actually, that's the thing that in my next film that I just finished writing it, and I'm writing the other ones, is I'm not gonna talk about very kind of the document way or the very actuality. I really wanted to go back mostly, or find some other kind of the characters in the region to talk about maybe other point of view of what's happening that we're not seeing in media, we're not seeing in other way that we know about the country, we know about what's going on, to the oppression and the people and all that. I really wanted to have this kind of different kind of point of view that I know about. I lived it, so yeah.
Yeah, I also think, if I can just add, it's also about the power of archetypes, right? I think when you have very strong classic stories that are well told, they tend to resonate. And when you go back and dig in, this film was very inspired by Persian miniatures. was another reason for the paper cutout technique. So when you go back and dig around in the past and find the thing that resonates today, I think that creates that link with an audience.
Very good. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to our audience for sticking around to hear from all of these artists. Fariza, you're raising your finger. Did you want to say something? Or?
Yes, I just wanted, because when you asked Sandra, I didn't say say anything, but we just wanted to add that for Sandra, it was very important to do this film about this period, which is still a big taboo, as we were saying, about different conflicts that we were talking about. And it was really important for us to do it from the point of view of people and what it does to them. So that's why we have these really intimate moments between the sisters. It's not about the war itself, but what it does to people.
Right, right. Well, thank you all for sharing, giving us a look behind the scenes. I think these films really do communicate so much depth unto themselves, but it's fascinating to hear where they come from, how they were made, and I wish you all the best of luck. We hope to see you again in person at festivals, on the Oscar red carpet. We'll see, but congratulations and best of luck to you all.
Thank you.